Back from trips, restaurants, all doubled. Seriously, though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Is this the
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man.
We should start preparing ourselves for a goodbye message from tennis legend Venus Williams. The 43-year-old Compton native appears to be in the final phase of her historic career. For the third straight year, Venus was eliminated in the first round of the U.S. Open. She lost in 2 sets Monday night to Greet Menin of Belgium. Before this recent losing streak, Venus was 21-0 in the first round in the U.S. Open. She won 2 of her 7 Grand Slam titles at the Open, but it looks like time and a fragile knee are catching up to her. Even in defeat, a sellout crowd at Arthur Ashe Stadium gave Venus a standing ovation as she left the court. The Dodgers had 16 hits in their win last night over Arizona. They got home runs from Will Smith and Mookie Betts. Betts' homer was his 36th this season, a career high. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is dedicated to empowering our communities by providing progressive talk radio for our audience. We strive to be an intersectional voice for the voiceless. As a Black-owned and operated station, we are committed to highlighting diverse perspectives and creating safe spaces for meaningful dialogue. We believe that everyone has something unique to bring to these political, economic, social, and cultural conversations, and we don't shy away from the hard conversations about current events. We endeavor to be a beacon of hope and understanding, while boldly challenging listeners to think more deeply about difficult topics that impact us all. With this in mind, our mission statement at KBLA Talk 1580 is simple: to create an inclusive platform that promotes civil discourse through honest dialogue and encourages personal growth among our listeners, so they can become the active agents of change. Our vision is to establish ourselves as the premier radio network with relevant programming across the beloved community, connecting people through shared experiences and collective power for lasting impact beyond these challenging times.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, and I'm glad about it. We are now in hour 2, and another great hour in front of us after this one. So thanks for tuning in today. In this hour, conversation with Nat Glover, the first black man to have been elected sheriff in the Deep South since 1888. It just so happens that Glover is the former sheriff in a place called Jacksonville, Florida, where the murders of these 3 precious black fellow citizens happened just days ago. We were talking this hour about striving for justice as a black sheriff in the Deep South. Now that we're joined by Nat Glover. Mr. Glover, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you, Tavis?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I am doing well. I'm delighted to have you on this program, and I am anxious to get into your new book called Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. Glad we have the hour to sort of unpack some of what you've written in this powerful text. Let me start with the obvious, though. We've been discussing it on this program, as has the nation. What happened in Jacksonville some days ago. I don't need to color it much for you, given that this is your neck of the woods. But what did you make? What do you make of what happened days ago in Jacksonville?
Well, I was really saddened by the tragic that occurred here in Jacksonville. You know, you do have those militant racist groups out there, but when they decide to come into a populated area and start shooting, somehow I think they've been encouraged or emboldened. So I'm kind of concerned about that. But it was a sad day, and 3 people killed, and that's most unfortunate. But in this country, we've had some situations that look like that we, as well as we move forward, we sometimes have to take a few steps back. But we will continue to move forward here in this country with racial harmony.
I hope you're right about that last part. Let me ask you, as former sheriff in that community, your take on guns. I'm always fascinated to hear people who have been in and are in law enforcement talk about guns. The rest of us are talking about it. We have our view on it. This young man clearly had the assailant clearly had a track record of having mental health issues. And even with that track record, he was allowed to legally buy the guns that he used on the day he murdered these 3 African Americans. What's your take on the gun culture, on gun violence in this country?
Well, I think my perspective is that part is on us as a society, because you and I know that when a person has some mental challenges, they entertain thoughts that's not rational. So what we need to do is, as well as we can, control their environment and also control their access to certain instruments that would be of danger to other people. And that's guns, that's explosives, that's putting them in a situation where it would jeopardize others. And we just haven't been able to implement the kind of legislation that would restrict access to the point where that wouldn't happen. So I put that one on us as a society.
Is it your view that America has a gun problem?
I think so. The right to bear arms is a fundamental right. And, of course, I do believe that the authors of the Constitution also expected us to be, and I say us as a society, as a governing body, since we have a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, then I think they would have had to look to us to make the best decisions for the time that we are in. And I think as I look at the toxic environment of the governance in our two-party system now, I think we are failing in that in some instances, too many instances.
How do you read the data that suggests that the group in this country buying guns the fastest right now are actually black folk?
Say that again, Tavis.
The data suggests that the group of Americans right now who are buying guns at a faster clip than anybody else are black folk. In other words, black folk are arming themselves. When we come forward, I want to get your take on that. Just watching my clock here. I don't want to get you started and have to cut you off on that response. It's fascinating for me that in this particular moment, black people are buying a whole lot of guns. There's a black militia. I was just watching a piece on one of the news networks the other night about this black militia that is now formed. So black people are starting to feel some sort of heat or feel some sort of way about the future of this country, and they are arming themselves. And I want to get Nat Glover's take on that when we come forward. He's author of the new book, Striving for Justice, A Black Sheriff in the Deep South. You're listening to Nat Glover right now on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
Escalade IQ. This just an intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfection like zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat in the Lex since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Feel it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bustin', truckin'. Cadillac, Cadillac, Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range on a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection consistent with the CHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
You're listening to K-Trip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like watering your lawn during the hottest time of the day and leaky faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on. K-Trip.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time-to-talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Carson, you back!
Hey, I am Jasmine Carson, LSU Women's Basketball National Champion. I had to up my game, and this time I upped my intimate grooming routine too. Venus for Pubic Hair and Skin is the only razor and regimen specifically designed for your pubic area. Featuring a razor with a patented irritation defense bar and a skincare regimen that is dermatologist tested, Venus helps protect your pubic skin from shave irritation. Visit GilletteVenus.com to learn more about the full regimen of products.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Our guest in this hour is Nathaniel Nat Glover. He's author of the new book, Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. In a moment, you're going to hear the harrowing story of what happened to him in Jacksonville as a 17-year-old black boy. It's an arresting story. This book, by the way, has a foreword to it by Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton has put his imprimatur on the work and witness of Nat Glover, and we'll talk about the book in a second. And again, that story, what happened to him in Jacksonville as a 17-year-old black kid. Before I do that, though, just a final question here about black folk and guns. So we saw what this young white boy did, killing these three precious black lives, snuffing out these black lives days ago in your hometown of Jacksonville, Nat Glover. I was asking what you make of the fact that in a moment like this, apparently black folk are feeling something that's driving them to arm themselves. How do you read that?
Well, I read that like obviously a person that's looking at that would say they are preparing for some kind of reprisal, even if it's no more than being prepared to defend themselves. But I can tell you this, that's taken us down a road that we as a society certainly would not like to see. So as I talk to people, I see more law enforcement officers at Sunday morning in the black church protecting the church when you didn't hardly see that at one time. And that is because there is a sense of feeling some threat. So with that, I'm going to say that's a road that we need to look at and see if we can't resolve this in a way better than us against them.
Yeah, I take your point, but I guess the question is, what are black folk to do? This killer in your hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, that went to this dollar store and killed these black folk, we are told that he went to an HBCU campus first. He tried to get on an HBCU campus and was turned away, and that's how he found himself later at this store. So clearly, he had it out for black people. He didn't get on this black campus, and then he goes to this store and kills black people there. And I could do this all day long if I had the time of black people being targeted. We saw it in Buffalo, New York, and all the stuff I know, you know as well, Mr. Glover. So black people, you know, I said on this program earlier this week, on Monday, we commemorated the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, as everybody knows, and it's apparent to me, it's clear to me that black folk 60 years after the March on Washington are still the most hated folk in this country. So I hear your point about us going down a particular road, but when black life in 2023 is still threatened in that way, when we're still hated in the way that we are, we'll hear your story in a moment of what happened to you as a 17-year-old in Jacksonville, Florida. That stuff is still happening. So if not arming themselves, what's your advice? What are black folk to do?
Well, that's a good question, and the natural nature of a person is certainly to protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they are remediating in that area to a certain degree. But it's also kind of like what Martin Luther King was saying,
mm-hmm.
and that is there were others when you had blatant racial discrimination. There were a segment in our community that wanted to strike back with violence,
mm-hmm.
and Martin Luther King preached, of course, nonviolence, and he prevailed, and I think his leadership in that area put us where we are now. And believe me now, the reason that you have such blatant attacks is because African Americans are moving forward in this country
mm-hmm.
at a rate that concern some of the other race, to be honest with you. When you end up electing an African American African American president in this country, and then you have a situation like George Floyd,
mm-hmm.
and you look at the protesters in the street, and there were times when it looked like it was more white protesters than there were black. I can tell you those who are diligent protectors of white privilege are very, very concerned about that. But we are going to have to keep moving forward. Even if we have to take a step back, we have to continue to push forward.
You're in the Deep South, and I'm working my way right into your book here in just a second. You're in the Deep South. Tell me, as a former sheriff, how concerned you are about white supremacy in the South, and for that matter, all across the country. What's your read of that right about now in 2023?
Yeah, you when you look at the toxic environment of our governance
mm-hmm.
in this country, I'm talking Democrat, Republicans, and when you look at in our governing system, we are supposed to have a system where the objective is to do what's best for the citizens. But when it's so clear that that's not necessarily happening, we are in this us and them environment where if one side says yes, the other side going to say no, no matter what the objective is. And it just seemed like the citizens' rights, needs, and all of that are incidental.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to find our way out of this hole that we in. Because in my opinion, it's not serving anyone. And when you have a Senate that tells a black president that I'm not going to entertain your nomination for the Supreme Court, and it's a year out, and they don't do it, and says it in open, and I mean, where are we in our society? I'm concerned about that, Tavis.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Let me put a finer point on that, and we'll move on into your book, Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. And I want the audience to hear what happened to you as a 17-year-old, as I said moments ago. But I want to just add something right quick to what you said about Mitch McConnell and those Republican senators who refused to give Barack Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, at the time a hearing, even though the election was a year out. And McConnell argued, we're going to wait till after the election. No doubt about the fact that McConnell was wrong, that the president got played in that regard. And we know that story well. But I was literally just in conversation 48 hours ago with a few people, and we were talking about this. And what came out of that conversation, and I'm putting this out there just for folk to think about this. Barack Obama had the opportunity, had he chosen to do so, to pick Ketanji Brown Jackson. She was on his list. Rather than pick KBJ, Barack Obama chose to go with Merrick Garland. Because he chose Merrick Garland, another white guy, Mitch McConnell and those Republicans felt no compunction whatsoever to push back on Obama the way that they did. Consider the following. What would McConnell have done if Obama had, in fact, nominated the first black woman to sit on the United States Supreme Court? Think about it for just a second. There is absolutely no way that Mitch McConnell would have had the nerve, the temerity, the racial politics would have been too hot for him to deny the first African-American woman nominated to the Supreme Court a hearing. In this regard, the fact that Merrick Garland was another white male allowed McConnell to do what he had done. There was nothing historic about that. But if Obama, ahead of Joe Biden, had nominated KBJ to that seat, it would have put McConnell in a trick bag like he couldn't have imagined. And I believe that he would not have had the opportunity. He would not have dared to do to KBJ in that moment what he did to Merrick Garland. So the question is, did Barack Obama make the wrong choice in that moment? Now, he could not have known necessarily that McConnell was going to behave in that way. I get that. I'm just asking a question. What would have happened had Obama nominated KBJ and not Joe Biden? I leave that alone. I only go there because of what Mr. Glover said moments ago. Just something for you to think about. Obama could have played McConnell as opposed to getting played by McConnell if he had chosen to nominate this first black woman. He chose not to do it, even though she was on his list. I digress on that. Your book is called Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. And there's a harrowing story in this book. It's fascinating for me when I get into the book, knowing, of course, that you were the first black to be elected as sheriff in the Deep South since 1888. But it's fascinating for me how you chose to become a law enforcement officer, given what happened to you when you were just 17. Nat Glover, tell the story.
Well, let me, if you don't mind, Tavis, I would like to just come from Barack Obama's perspective.
Sure.
When you are the first of anything, you have to make decisions based on sometimes go against what you think that might be even the best.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to go with something that you think that might get implemented.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you there were many times where I wanted to put a person in a position,
mm-hmm.
but I knew everybody was watching, and I did not want to give them any reason to push back.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to do what was best that will serve both causes. And I know Barack Obama was trying to do the same thing.
I don't.
You just almost have to be in that position to to understand that position.
I'm not being argumentative. This is a rich dialogue, and I love this. That's why I do talk radio every day, so we can get into these rich conversations. I hear your point, and my retort is simply this. Number one, Mr. Glover, Sheriff Glover, they're going to push back on you anyway. And with all due respect, that's the lesson I think Barack Obama didn't learn until too late. That you are a Negro. Mitch McConnell told you on the first day you took office, his job was to defeat you. His job was to make sure that you were not successful. He told you that on day one. Fast forward a few days later, you're giving a speech, and somebody stands up in the middle of the Congress and calls you a liar in the middle of the speech. I could do this all day long if I had the time. On and on and on. There are examples that he should have picked up on, that they are not going to let you do this easily. They're going to push back on you at every turn anyway. So if black people have come to the rescue, and we've turned out in record numbers to put you in there, then go ahead and do what you got to do anyway, because the pushback is going to come. I hear your point that folk are watching, and you didn't want to give them any reason to push back on you, but they're going to push back on you anyway, Sheriff. So why not push your agenda through?
Well, point taken.
That's all I'm saying.
I hear you.
Yeah, I don't think that Merrick Garland was necessarily a bad choice. That's not my argument. I don't think he was a bad choice. I'm just saying politically and strategically, Obama could have. This ain't checkers. This is chess. And I think Obama could have outmaneuvered Mitch McConnell. Again, he knew McConnell was not going to do him any favors. And I believe that he could have outmaneuvered him by appointing KBJ and not Merrick Garland. I repeat, I do not believe, and there is no way that black folk in this country, look at all the love that KBJ got when Joe Biden nominated her. There is absolutely no way that black folk would have stood by, that progressives would have stood by. I mean white progressives. No way a historic moment like KBJ could have happened, and we would have allowed Mitch McConnell to deny the first African-American woman nominated a hearing. No way he could have gotten away with that. And I believe, again, it's the fact that Merrick Garland was, in fact, just another white male, that McConnell just played politics as he usually does, being the white male that he is. But if KBJ had been the nominee, I do not believe that story would have turned out the way that it did. I'm watching my clock here, and I know if I let you start answering this question now about what happened to you, and you are certainly entitled to respond to what I said, and I'm glad you did. I take your point, you take my point. It's all good and it's all love. But I want the audience to hear this story of what happened to you as a 17-year-old boy when you walked outside one night from the job that you were working at. It's a miracle to me, and maybe not a miracle, but it's fascinating certainly that after what happened to you, you still decided to become a member of law enforcement. We're talking to Nathaniel Nat Glover. His book is called Striving for Justice, A Black Sheriff in the Deep South, and we will get that answer, get that story, I should say, and a great deal more. There's a lot in this book to unpack, and we'll spend the rest of our time talking about it when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. 2 former leaders of the right-wing Proud Boys will be sentenced today for seditious conspiracy for their roles in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Federal prosecutors are asking that former Proud Boys chairman Enrique Tarrio be sentenced to 33 years in prison and co-defendant Ethan Nordine be sentenced to 27 years for trying to stop Congress from certifying Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election. Coolidge Ball, the first black student athlete to be enrolled at the University of Mississippi, has died. The announcement was made Tuesday by University Chancellor Glenn Boyce, who called Ball a pioneer and trailblazer whose courage helped to open the doors for countless other student athletes at Ole Miss. Ball was 71. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
We have a new problem working on the 101 Hollywood Freeway southbound at Vermont Avenue. 2 vehicles involved there and traffic jamming up now coming away from Sunset Boulevard. Stays slowed down to the 4 level. Very busy on the 101 northbound drive with a traffic hazard reported at the 110 North Connector. Traffic is jammed up from 4th Street.
Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right, everything you earned doubled. The cash back from trips, restaurants, all doubled. Seriously, though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Wendy's new breakfast 2 for $3 Biggie Bundles let you choose from your fave 4, including a sausage or egg and cheese biscuit, small seasoned potatoes, or medium hot coffee. Limited time only during breakfast hours. U.S. price and participation may vary. Not valid in a combo. Single item at regular price.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man.
We should start preparing ourselves for a goodbye message from tennis legend Venus Williams. The 43-year-old Compton native appears to be in the final phase of her historic career. For the 3rd straight year, Venus was eliminated in the first round of the U.S. Open. She lost in 2 sets Monday night to Greet Menin of Belgium. Before this recent losing streak, Venus was 21-0 in the first round in the U.S. Open. She won 2 of her 7 Grand Slam titles at the Open, but it looks like time and a fragile knee are catching up to her. Even in defeat, a sellout crowd at Arthur Ashe Stadium gave Venus a standing ovation as she left the court. The Dodgers had 16 hits in their win last night over Arizona. They got home runs from Will Smith and Mookie Betts. Betts' homer was his 36th this season, a career high. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Support comes from Getty, presenting The Gospel at Colonus, a theatrical event under the stars that reimagines the story of Oedipus. Blending Greek myth with Black spiritual practice, the show follows the blinded Oedipus as he seeks redemption after a lifetime of tragedy. Co-produced by Court Theater, conceived and adapted by Lee Brewer, with music composed by Bob Telson. Thursdays through Saturdays this September at the Getty Villa Museum. Tickets available now at getty.edu.
Dominique DePrima here. Having a good credit score is one critical step to obtain a loan to buy a home. But did you know that your credit score is just one factor in getting a mortgage loan? Think about this. Lenders also consider your income, your employment history, current monthly debts, the size of the loan, and the amount of your down payment. Whatever your financial goals, U.S. Bank Access Commitment Initiatives support you in reaching them.
Access your personal financial goals at usbank.com/access. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley in conversation with Nathaniel Nat Glover, author of the book with a foreword from Bill Clinton. The book is called Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. Mr. Glover, tell me the story. What happened to you when you were a 17-year-old kid in Jacksonville?
Well, Travis, I can tell you the incident that happened to me when I was 17 years old pretty much shaped my life. Mm-hmm. And it is a day that I could have died. It wouldn't have been nothing less than a modern-day lynching. Mm. I happened to be working at Morrison Cafeteria in downtown Jacksonville. And on that particular Saturday, there were some sit-in demonstrations going on throughout downtown Jacksonville. And they were mostly conducted by the youth group of the NAACP. And just for those individuals who don't know what a sit-in demonstration is, at that time, the rights of African Americans were so restricted that you could go into a department store and, of course, buy clothes and that kind of thing. But if they had a lunch counter in there, you were prohibited. You were prohibited from sitting at that lunch counter with white people. And these sit-in demonstrators were coming in and going into these stores, making a purchase, and then sitting down at the lunch counter, which pretty much shut the lunch counter down. Well, on this particular Saturday, it was out in the community that these white racists and Klansmen were going to put a stop to it. So they came into downtown Jacksonville and literally shut down downtown Jacksonville, and there was a truck pulled up loaded with axe handles, brand new axe handles, and each one of these people were issued an axe handle. And when those sit-in demonstrators came in and sat at the lunch counter, they attacked them with those axe handles and ran them out of town. Now, I was working at the cafeteria. I did not know what was happening on the outside. I wasn't part of the demonstration. I was working. Mm-hmm. And that day, the manager of the cafeteria came to our work area in the dish room and told us to leave, get out of downtown Jacksonville right now. Mm-hmm. And everybody cleared out but me. My job was to mop the floor after everybody left. And, of course, they were trying to convince me to go, but I had this work ethic that I didn't leave a job before I finished. So I mopped that whole area. So I left an hour after everybody else had gone. So when I walked out, I walked into a mob that quickly encircled me, and they all had axe handles. I was in the middle, and they were menacingly hitting me with the axe handle and calling me names, and I was terrified, to be honest with you. But there was a police officer standing right outside the circle that was not taking any kind of abatement or police actions. He was just watching. So I ran over to him and said, "Please help me, officer." And he said to me, and this particular statement rang in my ears today. He said, "You better get out of here before they kill you." And I ran. And I tell you, Tavis, I ran home, which was about a mile away from downtown Jacksonville. I was so afraid I didn't even look back to see when or if they stopped chasing me. And when I got home, I cried, and I cried all day. And I can tell you to this day, I was not crying because of pain. If I was hurting, I was unaware of it. I was crying because I was so afraid, and I ran. I ran from a fight. And in my neighborhood, you did not run from a fight. If you ran from a fight, you were considered a coward, and you would have had to live with that the rest of your life. So I ran because I was afraid, and I did not want to be a coward. So I made this promise to myself: I will never run away from another fight. I will never not do something that I should do, or something that I should do, not do it because of fear. And in that sense, it changed my life. And to that day, I live by that mantra. And to a great degree, it has served me well. And it also solidified my desire to be a police officer and be in that process that strive for justice.
See, I having gone through the book, of course, I get it. But for those who may be listening right now who are having a very difficult time trying to understand why it is that when your life was literally on the line, a police officer refused to help you and told you to run before they killed you, but did nothing to come to your aid, why it is that motivated you to become a cop rather than hating every cop you see for the rest of your life.
Well, that wasn't even close. I had always wanted to be a detective, and I can tell you this today, and some of my friends don't like when I said this, but I believe that police officer standing outside of that circle watching might have prevented one of those individuals from hitting me in the head with that axe handle, and me going down, and a frenzy of axe hits could have followed. But I tell you this, what it did do, it put a kind of run to the fire instead of running away from the fire attitude in my mind and heart. And it was able to help me distinguish my career in a way that I was able to move through the ranks to become a law enforcement officer, and not only that, eventually be elected sheriff, and not only that, subsequently be nominated to the Florida Law Enforcement Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I hear the story. You told it beautifully. But when you have a bunch of white folks surrounding you with axe handles, and there's no way, you could win that fight against all of those forces. I'm disturbed and troubled by why even then you felt like a coward. I understand the rule of the neighborhood. You don't run from a fight. But that wasn't a fair fight. I mean, you couldn't have taken on all those white boys with those axe handles, and yet you still felt like a coward for running away.
And that was a result of my immaturity, because no one that I've talked to has said that was not the right thing to do, to run.
Sure.
And to this day, I believe that from a logical perspective. But I did not want my friends to call me a coward. And that, in a way, and I'm going to say, Tavis, I don't hesitate to say, in a divine way.
Yes.
It put me in a mindset that allowed me to be first one through the door when there were others who might be fearful.
Nope, I get it. I get how that informed your life every day thereafter, and it informed his life in such a way that he goes on to become the first black man to be elected sheriff in the Deep South since 1888. And we'll talk when we come forward about some of the amazing things he did as sheriff. In fact, he was ahead of the country, frankly, in most departments when it came to banning chokeholds. We'll talk about that when we come forward with Nat Glover on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Are you looking for a tax preparation firm that understands the unique financial challenges of African American business owners? Then look no more. Wealth Management Financial Advisors can prepare and file your individual and business taxes. They're committed to providing their clients with the best possible service. See how they make the greatest impact on your taxes. Find them at wealthmanagementlb.com or call them at 562-427-8877. That's 562-427-8877.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here with a quick recap for my time at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. There were speakers Ian Dunlap, Damon John, Lynn Richardson, MC Light, Don Kennedy, to name a few. Take a listen to what Justin Grant, Community Development Lead at Chase's Advancing Black Pathway, let's see what he had to say.
So I'm Justin Grant. I lead community development and national partnerships for JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Pathway strategy. And so we're focused on strengthening the economic foundation of black communities, and we're making targeted investments in programs like the Advancing Black Wealth Tour to help us get our tools and resources out to the community to drive sustained impact over time.
So when it comes to black and brown people, it sounds like Chase is making it their personal responsibility not only to facilitate these events, but to educate and provide resources. So Mr. Grant, I have to ask, what does wealth building look like for the individual?
It's home ownership, it's having that freedom to be able to start your own business and create jobs in your community, and it's having that long-term plan towards retirement, having that vision for what you want your life to be, and you have the resources to actually live it.
I'm Maisha Cairo. Thanks for sticking around. That was my recap from Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. First stop was here in LA, and they're taking it national.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Nat Glover, I was in not Florida, but Mississippi last weekend. Mississippi happens to be the state of my birth. I live in Los Angeles. This program is heard nationwide, but we are flagshipped here in L.A., where I've lived most of my life. But I was born in Mississippi on the Gulf Coast, there in Gulfport, the Biloxi area. And I was back in Mississippi last weekend with my friend Cornel West. Speaking of presidents, we were talking about Obama earlier. Cornel West, of course, running for president on the Green Party ticket as an independent. So he and I were together last weekend in Mississippi, and I said to him, we were being escorted around the state as we went from event to event by the state police. And I looked at him at one point, and I said, Doc, here we are in the back of a police car being escorted by the police in the state of Mississippi, two black men being escorted and protected by state police. And we got a lot more to do in this country, but it was just a moment where he and I just looked at each other and just kind of had a moment about what that means in a place like Mississippi, that we were in the back of a police car, not to be taken somewhere and killed like Emmett Till, but being protected as we moved around the state to the events that we had to go to. I raised that to ask, what is it like being a black sheriff in the Deep South? You were the first one elected since 1888. What was that experience like?
It was I guess, a gratifying experience for me, but I also knew that I was under intense scrutiny.
Sure.
And I had to get it right. And to be just another sheriff would be almost criminal in my situations. So I had to do something, a number of things that would distinguish me from my peers. When I went to the first Florida Sheriff's Association meeting, I could tell I was welcomed by a few. Another class of a few was kind of tolerant, but most of the other were keeping a distance. And I knew I had to add some kind of, do something for them to accept me.
Yeah.
And I came back and, of course, initiated my community policing initiatives to a level where the President of the United States called me and said to me, I understand you walk through the neighborhoods and talk to the citizens on a regular basis, and I want to come down and bring Attorney General Janet Reno with me, and we want to walk through a neighborhood with you. And he did that, and when he came down, of course, the governor of the state of Florida came down, and we walked through a neighborhood, a regular walk. And then when I went back to my next Florida Sheriff's Association meeting, they all wanted to know how I did it.
There you go.
And so you have to earn that kind of recognition of raising your head above your peer group. That's what I've done throughout my career.
Yep, nothing succeeds like success, and I ain't mad at you, Sheriff Glover. When we come forward in our remaining moments, I want to talk to him specifically about his decision, his courageous decision to ban chokeholds before many in the country realized how wrong that was. It took a while for people to catch up to that after Eric Garner, after the knee on Derek Chauvin's neck. Jordan Neely recently choked out on a subway in New York City, but he was ahead of the country in banning chokeholds. We'll talk about that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
KBLA Talk 1580 stands for Unity and Healing. African Focus Incorporated is a nonprofit organization based in California that focuses on the growth and well-being of Africans all around the world. Their mission is to promote the well-being of people of African descent through knowledge and appreciation of one another by building a bridge of love and understanding. African Focus Incorporated strives for cultural, educational, and economic growth. They're the organization behind the African Family Induction Ceremony, African Goodwill Awards, African Focus Trailblazer Tours, African Dance Competition and Showcase Los Angeles, Family Day, Good News Windows Microfinance Project, and more. To volunteer, travel with African Focus, or to attend one of their community building events, please call 310-676-7730. That's 310-676-7300. Or visit AfricanFocus.org. This is a diaspora-wide community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
Got just a few minutes left in this conversation with Nathaniel Nat Glover, former Jacksonville sheriff, activist leader, author of the book Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South, with a forward by former President Bill Clinton. In these last few minutes, I want to talk about this chokehold. We see some progress that's been made in this country, Sheriff Glover, after the deaths of these black men whose names I just ran a moment ago. George Floyd, Eric Garner, Jordan Neely on that subway most recently. But you realized a while ago that these chokeholds needed to go. What made you understand that and see that before others did?
Well, I can tell you right now, I began to see a pattern. Mm-hmm. And the pattern was clearly most of the people who were subjected to chokeholds, in my opinion, were people who were suffering from mental challenges. Mm-hmm. And, of course, when you start telling police officers, look, I'm going to take this tool away from you, then, of course, they start to push back. But I thought it was one of those situations. They called it officially the lateral vascular neck restraint. Mm-hmm. But I had a situation in my jail where a person had to be subjected to that, and he died. So at that point, and incidentally, he was on the mental ward in the jail. Mm-hmm. And I said, enough of this. And I went ahead and banned it. Now, I got pushback from the officers. I got pushback from the labor fraternal order police, mm-hmm. and all of that. But I thought it was important that we did this. Yeah. And I did it, and it worked out. And I feel great that I did it.
Yeah. Let me close with this. I got about 90 seconds left. You had huge success. Again, President Clinton and others came down to take note of your success when it came to community-based policing. Can that model still work? Does it still work in an era where I think it's fair to say that more of us now than ever distrust police?
Yeah, it's got to work. See, police officers and the police agencies are not an occupied force. If they don't work with the communities, you will never be able to solve crimes in a way with the level of efficiency that it will be effective. And in addition to that, it will be a great crime prevention, because if some of these bad guys know that you under scrutiny and the people going to step forward and help, then they will not commit some crimes that they do commit. So I think it's important that we work with the community. We got to win that trust, and the people have to see that the law enforcement community has integrity. And incidentally, Tavis, the book, Striving for Justice, the proceeds will go to educate poor kids who have the ability to go to college, but will not have the funds to go. So that's what this is all about.
Nat Glover still helping people. He's the former Jacksonville sheriff and author of the book Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South, the first black man to have been elected sheriff in the Deep South since 1888. It's a fitting book called Striving for Justice. Sheriff Glover, good to have you on the program, sir. All the best to you. Thank you for your time. I deeply appreciate it.
And thank you, Tavis.
Good to have you on. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. 2 former leaders of the right-wing Proud Boys will be sentenced today for seditious conspiracy for their roles in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Federal prosecutors are asking that former Proud Boys chairman Enrique Tarrio be sentenced to 33 years in prison and co-defendant Ethan Nordine be sentenced to 27 years for trying to stop Congress. And he won. And that's